Ambassador Day-1 Park sat in his office aboard Station Terminus and stared at the message on his screen. The words were simple but made his stomach tight with worry. The Galactic Council demanded his immediate presence at an emergency session. No explanation. No agenda. Nothing. In 23 years of human membership in the Council, this had never happened before. Every meeting always came with detailed notes about what they would discuss. Every session followed strict rules about notice and preparation time. This broke every protocol in the book. Day-1 stood and walked to the window. Outside, the massive station stretched in all directions. Terminus was bigger than most moons. Ships from dozens of species docked at its ports every hour. Aliens of every shape and color walked its corridors. This place represented everything humanity had worked toward since making first contact. A seat at the table, a voice in galactic affairs, recognition that humans mattered. His door chimed. "Come in," he called. Yuna Choi entered holding her datapad. She was his deputy and knew more about alien cultures than anyone else in Earth's diplomatic corps. Her face showed the same concern he felt. "You got the summons too?" she asked. "5 minutes ago. What do you make of it?" Yuna shook her head. "I've been checking with other delegations. The younger species all got the same message. But the old ones, the eldest races, they're not talking. Something big is happening, Day-1. He nodded slowly. The eldest races controlled the Council, 3 ancient species that had ruled the galaxy for thousands of years. The Validators were cybernetic beings so old that no one remembered their original form. The Hegemon Collective were massive warriors who commanded the largest fleet in known space. The Architects were mysterious and rarely spoke, but when they did, everyone listened. "How much time do we have?" Day-1 asked. 30 minutes. The session starts at midday station time. Day-1 grabbed his formal jacket. "Contact Captain Shin. Tell her to put the Resilience on alert status. I don't like surprises." Yuna's eyes widened slightly, but she nodded. Bora Shin commanded Earth's flagship. If Day-1 wanted the ship on alert, he expected trouble. 25 minutes later, Day-1 entered the Grand Council chamber. The room was enormous. It could hold representatives from all 47 member species, plus their staff and observers. Today it was completely full. That never happened except for the most important votes. Day-1 found his seat in the human section. Other ambassadors from younger species sat nearby. He recognized the Ven delegate, a small amphibious creature named Riss. The Tolmec representative, a being that looked like living crystal. The Freehold ambassador, whose species only joined 10 years ago. They all looked nervous. The eldest races sat on elevated platforms at the chamber's center. High Validator Keth 7 was a towering figure of metal and synthetic flesh, its red optical sensors scanning the room. Hegemon Commander Vrol was twice as tall as any human, covered in armor plates that never came off. The architect, called Silence Between Stars, looked almost human, but something about it felt wrong, like it existed slightly outside normal space. Keth 7's voice boomed through the chamber. It spoke through mechanical translation that made every species hear it in their own language. "This session is now in order. We gathered today to announce a new protocol for the stability and security of the Galactic Council." Day-1 leaned forward. "New protocol?" That usually meant new rules. New rules from the eldest usually meant new restrictions on everyone else. "For 10,000 years, the Council has maintained peace and order," Keth 7 continued. "But recent analyses show growing instability in younger species territories. Resource conflicts, border disputes, unauthorized military expansion. This cannot continue." Vrol stood, his massive form making the platform groan. "The Hegemon Collective has identified security threats from uncontrolled technological development. Younger species acquire weapons without proper oversight. They build fleets without considering galactic balance." Day-1 felt his jaw tighten. Earth had built up its military in the last decade, not to threaten anyone, but because humans learned long ago that showing weakness invited attack. The galaxy wasn't always friendly. Silence Between Stars spoke in a voice that seemed to come from everywhere at once. "Therefore, the eldest races propose a stabilization protocol. All species admitted to the Council in the last 5,000 years will contribute to collective security." Here it comes, Day-1 thought. Keth 7 displayed a hologram in the center of the chamber. Numbers and percentages glowed in the air. "Each younger species will provide the following: 40% of all military vessels to be placed under Council command. 30% of annual economic output to be contributed to the Council treasury. All advanced research in weapons, propulsion, and artificial intelligence to be shared with Council oversight. The chamber erupted. Not in protest, but in shocked silence. Then quiet murmuring started. Ambassadors whispered to their aides. Datapads lit up as people checked the numbers. Day one did the math in his head. 40% of Earth's fleet meant giving up almost half their ships. 30% of economic output would cripple their economy. And sharing all their research? That meant giving away every advantage humanity had worked to develop. The then ambassador raised a tentacle. Honored eldest, this seems like a significant demand. May we have time to consult with our governments? You may have 48 hours, Keth 7 said. But understand this. The protocol is not optional. It is necessary for galactic stability. Species that refuse to participate will be considered threats to Council security. Vrol's voice was like grinding stone. The Hegemon fleet will enforce compliance if needed. Day one stood. Ambassador Park of Earth, I must formally request clarification. Are you saying that refusal will be met with military action? All eyes turned to him. Silence between stars tilted its head. We are saying that the Council cannot allow threats to stability. Species that refuse to contribute to collective security make themselves threats. Threats must be addressed. It was a yes without saying yes. Day one understood perfectly. Submit or face consequences. Earth requests the full 48 hours to respond, he said, keeping his voice steady. Granted, Keth 7 said. All younger species have 48 hours. We expect full compliance documentation at that time. The session is concluded. The eldest races filed out. Day one stood frozen for a moment. Around him, other ambassadors were already rushing to contact their governments. Some looked terrified. Others looked resigned. The Freehold ambassador was openly crying. Yuna appeared at his elbow. Day one, this is bad. I know, they're asking us to surrender. Not in those words, but that's what this is. I know, he said again. They walked back to the human office in silence. Once inside with the door sealed, Day one activated the secure communication channel to Earth. The line connected after a few seconds. Premier Han Sol Kim's face appeared on the screen. Ambassador Park, we've been monitoring. I assume you need to brief the cabinet? Yes, Premier. And quickly. We have 48 hours to decide Earth's future. Han Sol's face was grim. Then we better not waste time. I'm calling an emergency session now. Get me everything about this stabilization protocol. Every detail. Every implication. Yes, sir. The screen went dark. Day one sat down heavily. Yuna stood by the window looking out at the stars. What do you think Earth will do? She asked quietly. Day one was silent for a long moment. He thought about human history, about every time someone demanded submission, about every empire that thought humans would just roll over. I think, he said slowly, that the Council is about to learn something about humanity. What's that? That we don't surrender. Ever. Outside the window, the Resilience hung in space among other human ships. Small compared to some alien vessels, but solid and strong. Built by humans who refused to be weak. Crewed by people who believed in standing up for themselves. The 48-hour clock was ticking. And Earth had a decision to make. The emergency cabinet meeting started exactly 3 hours after the Council's announcement. Premier Han Sol Kim sat at the head of the table in Geneva. Around him sat the most powerful people on Earth. Military leaders, economic advisors, scientists, and diplomats all connected through holographic displays. Ambassador Daewon Park appeared from Station Terminus. Fleet Admiral Tae-Yang Lee joined from the Pacific Command Center. Dr. Ji-Won Nam connected from the Advanced Research Division in Seoul. 32 people total, representing every major government on Earth. Han Sol wasted no time. Everyone has read the Council's demands. Let's be clear about what we're discussing. Ambassador Park, give us the complete picture. Daewon nodded. The stabilization protocol requires 3 things. First, 40% of our military fleet under Council command. That's 35 ships, including the Resilience. Second, 30% of our economic output. That's roughly 12 trillion credits annually. Third, complete disclosure of all advanced research with Council oversight. What happens if we refuse? Asked Minister of Defense Sung-Min Kwan. They didn't say directly, Daewon replied. But Hegemon Commander Vrol made it clear the Hegemon fleet would enforce compliance. In diplomatic terms, that means military action. Fleet Admiral Tae Yang spoke up. I've been reviewing Council military capabilities. The Hegemon Collective alone commands over 2,000 warships. The Validators have another 1,000. If they decide to enforce this protocol, they can put 400 ships in our space within a week. We have 87 combat-capable vessels total. The numbers hung in the air like a death sentence. Someone at the table muttered something about impossible odds. What about the other younger species? Hansol asked. Are they resisting? Taewon shook his head. Most are preparing compliance documents. The Ven have already submitted. The Tolmec will follow. The smaller species have no choice. They're terrified. Why now? Asked Economic Minister Cho Hee Park. Why this protocol after all these years? Dr. Jiwon Nam cleared her throat. I may have an answer to that. My team has been analyzing council behavior patterns for the last decade. We've noticed something disturbing. Every time a younger species develops certain technologies, the council introduces new restrictions. When the Freehold discovered efficient fusion drives, the council created fuel oversight committees. When the Tolmec developed advanced sensors, the council demanded shared intelligence protocols. You're saying they suppress technological advancement, Hansol said. Yes, Premier, and I believe they're targeting humanity specifically. In the last 5 years, we've made breakthroughs in 3 key areas: advanced artificial intelligence, faster-than-light communication, and directed energy weapons. All 3 exceed Council standard technology. Admiral Tae Yang leaned forward. Are you saying we're ahead of them? In specific areas, yes. Our AI can process tactical data faster than validator systems. Our FTL communication doesn't require relay stations like theirs does. And our new energy weapons are more efficient than Hegemon plasma cannons. The room went quiet. This was news to most of them. Earth's research division kept their most advanced projects classified even from the government. Hansol looked at Dr. Jiwon carefully.
How far ahead?
5 to 10 years in AI, maybe 15 in FTL communications. The energy weapons are harder to estimate because we haven't seen them in combat. But our simulations show significant advantages. So the Council knows we're developing advanced technology, Hansol said slowly, and they want to take it before we get too strong. That's my assessment, Dr. Jiwon confirmed. Defense Minister Sung Min spoke again. Even with technological advantages, we can't fight the entire Council fleet. The numbers are impossible. Maybe not, Admiral Tae Yang said. Everyone looked at him. I've been running simulations since we heard about the protocol. If we fight defensively in our own space, use every advantage we have, and employ tactics they won't expect, we could hold them off. For how long? Hansol asked. Long enough to make it costly. Long enough that other species might think twice about submitting. Maybe long enough for political pressure to change things. That's a lot of maybes, said Foreign Minister Dong Hyun Lee. It is, the Admiral admitted, but the alternative is surrender. And surrender means Earth becomes a vassal state. We'll never be able to defend ourselves again. We'll work for them. Build for them. Give them everything while they keep us weak. Premier Hansol stood and walked to the window. Outside, the Geneva skyline stretched toward the Alps. Somewhere up there, beyond the atmosphere, the Council waited for Earth's answer. I want to hear from everyone, Hansol said. We need to understand all our options. Economic Minister, what happens if we submit? Cho Hee Park pulled up data on her screen. Immediate economic depression. 30% of our output equals everything we spend on education, healthcare, and infrastructure combined. We'd have to cut all of that or raise taxes by 50%. Either way, Earth's economy crashes. Recovery would take decades. Military implications, Admiral? Tae Yang's face was hard. 40% of our fleet means we lose the ability to defend our own space. The remaining ships couldn't protect our colonies. Couldn't patrol our trade routes. Couldn't respond to threats. We become dependent on Council protection, and they could demand more later. Research implications, Dr. Nam? Jiwon's voice was bitter. Complete stagnation. We'd have to share everything with Council oversight. That means validator inspectors in every lab. Hegemon commanders reviewing every weapons project. They'll take what they want and suppress what threatens them. Human innovation dies. Hansol turned back to the room. And if we refuse? Ambassador Park? Daewon met his eyes. War. Maybe not immediately, but eventually. The Council can't let us refuse without consequences. If Earth says no and survives, other species will say no too. The whole system falls apart. Can we win? No, Day One said honestly. But we might survive. And survival might be enough. The room fell silent again. Han Sol looked at each face on the screens. Some showed fear. Some showed anger. Some showed determination. I'm going to say something that might sound crazy, Han Sol began, but I need to say it. Humans have always been at our best when our backs are against the wall, when the odds are impossible, when everyone says we should give up. That's when we fight hardest. He paused, gathering his thoughts. Our entire history is full of moments like this. Small groups facing empires, weak nations resisting superpowers, people standing up when standing up meant death. And you know what? Sometimes we won. And when we didn't win, we made it so costly that the next person thought twice. You're talking about saying no, Foreign Minister Dong Hyun said quietly. I'm talking about being true to who we are, Han Sol replied. Earth didn't join the council to become a servant. We joined as equals. If they won't treat us as equals, then maybe we don't belong there. Defense Minister Sung Min spoke carefully. Premier, this is the survival of our species we're discussing. Principle is important, but so is living long enough to practice it. I know, Han Sol said. That's why I want a vote. Everyone in this room represents Earth's people. We need to decide together. 3 options. Submit and accept the protocol, try to negotiate for better terms, or refuse completely. Negotiation won't work, Day One said. I've been studying eldest race behavior for years. They don't negotiate with younger species. They dictate. Then we're down to 2 choices, Han Sol said. Submit or refuse. I want everyone's vote on record. Starting with the military. Admiral Tae Yang? The admiral didn't hesitate. Refuse. We can hold them off long enough to matter. Defense Minister Sung Min? A long pause. Refuse. If we submit now, we submit forever. Economic Minister Cho Hee? Refuse. Economic slavery is still slavery. Dr. Ji-won Nam? Refuse. I didn't spend 20 years developing new technology just to hand it over to beings who'll suppress it. One by one, they voted. Foreign ministers, intelligence chiefs, colonial governors, science advisors. Some voted quickly. Some took time. But the result was clear. 32 votes. 31 said refuse. Han Sol looked at the numbers on his screen. Ambassador Park, you understand what this means for you? You'll have to deliver this answer face to face. Yes, Premier. I understand. Then we're decided. Earth's official position is refusal. We will not submit to the stabilization protocol. We will not surrender our ships, our economy, or our research. And we will defend our right to remain free. Han Sol took a deep breath. Notify all military commands. Fleet Admiral, prepare defensive positions. Dr. Nam, make sure our advanced systems are ready. And Ambassador Park? Yes, Premier? Tell the Council that Earth's answer is no. The 48 hours passed like a countdown to execution. Ambassador Daewon Park didn't sleep much during that time. He spent the hours reviewing Earth's history, reading messages from home, and preparing for what came next. Now the moment arrived. The Grand Council chamber filled with representatives from every species in the galaxy, but today felt different from the last session. Today felt final. Daewon stood in the human section with Yuna at his side. Captain Bora Shin watched from the Resilience on a secure channel. Back on Earth, Premier Han Sol and his cabinet monitored every moment. And across the galaxy, billions of beings tuned in to witness what humanity would do. The younger species entered first. The Ven ambassador carried a data cube containing their compliance documentation. The Tolmec representative had similar files. One by one, the younger species came prepared to submit. Their faces showed resignation, defeat, the look of people who knew they had no choice. Then the eldest races entered. High Validator Keth 7 moved with mechanical precision to its platform. Hegemon Commander Vrol's massive form made the floor vibrate with each step. Silence between stars simply appeared, as if it had always been there and everyone just noticed. Keth 7's voice filled the chamber. This session will address the stabilization protocol responses. Each younger species will present their compliance documentation. We begin with the Ven Collective. The small amphibious ambassador approached the central podium. Its voice was quiet and sad. The Ven Collective accepts the stabilization protocol. We have prepared all required documentation. 40% of our fleet will report to Council Command within 10 days. Economic transfers will begin immediately. Research data is available for council review. Accepted, Keth7 said without emotion. Next, the Tolmec Unity. The crystal being's voice chimed like broken glass. The Tolmec Unity accepts the protocol. Our documentation is complete. Accepted. One after another, younger species submitted. The Freehold, the Remnant Worlds, the Cooperative States. Each one gave up their freedom piece by piece. Each one accepted that their place in the galaxy was to serve the eldest races. Day One watched and felt sick. This was how empires worked. Not through dramatic conquests, but through slow surrender. Make the price of resistance so high that submission seemed reasonable. Finally, Keth7 turned to the human section. The Terran Union. Ambassador Park, present your species' response. Day One stood. Every eye in the chamber followed him as he walked to the central podium. His footsteps echoed in the massive space. When he reached the center, he stood alone under the gaze of the eldest races. He looked up at Keth7. The ancient being's red optical sensors focused on him like weapons targeting systems. Ambassador Park, Keth7 said, the 48 hours have concluded. Does Earth submit to the stabilization protocol? Day One took a breath. This was the moment. Everything that came before led here. Everything that came after would flow from what he said next. In his earpiece, he heard Bora's voice from the Resilience. We're ready, Ambassador. Whatever you say, we're ready. From Earth, Premier Hansol sent a simple message. Speak for all of us. Day One looked at Keth7, then at Vrul. Then at Silence Between Stars. 3 ancient races that had ruled the galaxy for thousands of years. 3 powers that had crushed everyone who defied them. He spoke one word. No. The chamber went silent. Not the silence of shock, but the silence of complete disbelief. As if the entire galaxy held its breath. Keth7's optical sensors flickered. Please repeat. There appears to be a translation error. There's no error, Day One said clearly. Earth's answer is no. We refuse the stabilization protocol. Now the shock hit. Ambassadors throughout the chamber turned to each other. Whispers filled the space. Some species looked terrified. Others looked amazed. A few looked hopeful. Vrul stood from his platform. His voice was like thunder. You refuse? You understand what refusal means? Yes, Day One said calmly. We understand completely. Then you understand that the Council cannot tolerate threats to stability. That enforcement will be necessary. We understand that too. Silence Between Stars spoke, its voice seeming to come from inside Day One's head. Ambassador Park, your species is young. You have been part of the Council for barely 2 decades. Do you truly believe you can stand against powers that have existed for millennia? Day One met the being's strange gaze. We don't have to stand forever. We just have to stand long enough. Long enough for what? Keth7 demanded. Long enough for other species to see that resistance is possible. Long enough to show that the Council's power isn't absolute. Long enough to prove that freedom matters more than safety. The chamber erupted. Several ambassadors shouted questions. Others argued with their aides. The Ven representative looked at Day One with something like envy. The Freehold ambassador was crying again, but this time maybe not from fear. Vrul's voice cut through the chaos. Silence. Everyone stopped. The hegemon commander glared down at Day One. You will explain your refusal. You will justify why Earth believes it can defy the Council. I don't need to justify it, Day One said. Humans don't believe freedom requires justification. We believe slavery does. This is not slavery, Keth7 said. This is collective security. Then make it voluntary. If it's really about security, let each species choose whether to participate. Let them decide freely without threats. The Council has determined what is necessary, Silence Between Stars said. Individual choice is irrelevant to galactic stability. And that, Day One replied, is exactly why we refuse. Because you think our choice doesn't matter. Because you believe you have the right to make decisions for us. Because you see us as children who need guidance instead of equals who deserve respect. He looked around the chamber at all the other younger species. For 23 years, Earth has followed Council rules. We've paid our dues. We've contributed to peacekeeping. We've shared our culture and learned from others. We've been good members of this community. His voice grew stronger, but we won't be servants. We won't surrender our freedom because you demand it, and we won't pretend that submission is the same thing as cooperation. Yuna watched from the human section, her heart pounding. She had never seen Day One like this. Always calm, always diplomatic, now he was on fire. Keth 7 rose to its full height. Then the Council has no choice. Earth is declared in violation of Council mandate. You have 72 hours to reconsider. If you maintain this refusal, the Hegemon fleet will enforce compliance. How? Day 1 asked. Will you bomb our cities? Kill our people? Destroy our worlds? Is that what the mighty Council does to species that say no? Vrol's eyes blazed. If necessary, then do it. Come to Sol System. Bring your fleets. Bring your threats. But understand something. Day 1's voice filled the chamber. Humanity has faced extinction before. We've fought wars that killed billions. We've survived disasters that should have destroyed us. And every single time we've come out the other side. Not because we're stronger. Not because we're smarter. But because we refuse to give up. He pointed at the eldest races. You think your technology makes you superior. Your age makes you wise. Your power makes you right. But you've forgotten something that humans learned a long time ago. The strongest empires fall when they force people to submit. The wisest leaders know that fear creates rebellion. And power means nothing if you have to use it to keep people in chains. Silence between stars tilted its head. You believe you can win? No, Day 1 said honestly. We'll probably lose. Your fleets are bigger. Your weapons are tested. Your experience is vast. By every logical measure, we should surrender right now. He smiled slightly. But humans aren't always logical. Sometimes we're stubborn. Sometimes we're proud. And sometimes we believe that standing up for what's right matters more than survival. Then you choose death, Keth 7 said. We choose freedom. If that leads to death, then at least we die free. The words hung in the air. Around the chamber, younger species ambassadors sat frozen. Some looked inspired. Others looked horrified. But all of them were thinking about what Day 1 said. Vrul's voice was final. The Council will convene to discuss enforcement. Earth has 72 hours. Use that time wisely. This session is concluded. The eldest races left the chamber. Day 1 remained at the podium for a moment, his heart racing. Then he walked back to the human section. Yuna grabbed his arm. That was either the bravest thing I've ever seen, she whispered, or the craziest. Maybe both, Day 1 replied. As they left the chamber, other ambassadors watched them go. Some with fear, some with respect, and some, Day 1 noticed, with something that looked like hope. Back on the Resilience, Captain Bo-Ra closed the transmission. Her crew looked at her with questions in their eyes. Well, she said, now we see if humanity's courage is enough. The Council fleet arrived at the edge of Sol System exactly 72 hours after the deadline. 400 ships from a dozen different species, all under Hegemon command. The armada stretched across space like a wall of metal and fury. On Earth, people watched the skies and waited. Some prayed, some protested. Some simply held their families close. But nobody ran. Nobody suggested surrender. When humanity chose to stand, they stood together. Captain Bo-Ra Shin stood on the bridge of the Resilience and counted enemy ships on her display. 400 against 87. She had faced bad odds before, but never like this. All ships report ready, her tactical officer, Lieutenant Naribaek, reported. Defensive grid is active. Admiral Taeyang is waiting for your signal. Bo-Ra activated the fleet-wide channel. This is Captain Shin to all Earth forces. You know what we're facing. You know why we're here. Some of you have families on Earth. Some of you are far from home. But all of you chose to serve. To protect. To stand for something bigger than yourselves. She paused, looking at the faces of her crew. Young and old. Veterans and rookies. All of them ready. The Council thinks we'll break, she continued. They think our courage will fail when we see their fleet. They think humans will choose survival over freedom. Let's show them how wrong they are. The crew cheered. Not loud or wild, but determined. The sound of people who knew they might die but refused to quit. The Council fleet moved closer. At its head flew the Hegemon flagship Dominance, a ship 3 times the size of the Resilience. Hegemon Commander Vrul's face appeared on every human ship's communication screen. His massive form filled the display. Terran forces, this is your final opportunity. Stand down and accept the stabilization protocol. Failure to comply will result in the destruction of your military assets and occupation of your system. Bo-Ra didn't hesitate. This is Captain Bo-Ra Shin of Earth's Defense Fleet. Sol System is under human protection. You are not welcome here. Leave now or face the consequences. Vrul's laugh was like rocks grinding together. Consequences? You have 87 primitive ships against the might of the Council. Your bravery is foolish. Your defiance is pointless. Then it shouldn't take you very long to prove it, Bora replied. But I warn you, humans have a saying, don't start fights you can't finish. You're about to learn what that means. She cut the transmission. Nari looked at her with wide eyes. Captain, did you just threaten the entire Council fleet? Yes, and I meant it. Weapons ready? Yes, ma'am. All ships armed and locked. Then let's give them something to remember. The Council fleet advanced in formation. Perfect lines. Textbook military precision. Exactly what the Hegemon Collective always did. They believed in overwhelming force and direct assault. Crush the enemy with superior numbers and firepower. Admiral Tae Yang's voice came through on the command channel. All ships execute defensive pattern Delta. Make them work for every meter. The Earth fleet scattered, not in retreat but in calculated chaos. Ships broke formation and moved to positions throughout the inner system, behind asteroids, near planetary orbits, using debris fields for cover. The Council fleet suddenly had no single target to focus on. Vril ordered his ships forward. All vessels pursue and engage. Destroy them quickly. The Council ships broke formation to chase human vessels. That was their first mistake. Earth ships were faster than expected. More maneuverable, the heavy Council cruisers found themselves chasing targets that danced around them like fighters. The first engagement happened near Mars. 3 Council destroyers cornered an Earth frigate against the planet's orbital zone. They fired plasma cannons, energy weapons that should have torn through the human ship's hull. Instead, the shots splashed against shields that glowed blue and held. The Council ships paused, confused. Human shields weren't supposed to be that strong. The frigate spun and fired back. Directed energy weapons, bright beams of focused power. They cut through Council shields like paper and burned into armor. One destroyer's engines exploded. Another lost its weapon systems. The third retreated, damaged and confused. On the Dominance, Vril watched in disbelief.
How do they have that level of shielding?
Intelligence said their defensive technology was inferior. His tactical officer had no answer. Sir, they appear to have been developing systems in secret. Our information was incomplete. Incomplete, Vril growled. We'll discuss that later. All ships intensify assault. Use overwhelming firepower. But overwhelming firepower worked best against stationary targets. Earth's ships refused to stay still. They hit and ran, ambushed from behind asteroids, fired from unexpected angles, used every trick that desperation and creativity could create. Captain Hyun-Woo Song commanded Earth's defense grid from a station in the asteroid belt. He watched Council ships enter his trap zone and smiled. Activate platforms Alpha through Epsilon. Let's show them what home field advantage means. Hidden weapons platforms throughout the system came online. They had been positioned over months, disguised as mining equipment and communication relays. Now they revealed their true purpose. Energy beams lanced out from a dozen directions. Council ships suddenly found themselves taking fire from sources they didn't know existed. Shields overloaded. Hulls breached. The perfect Council formation dissolved into chaos. Vril's anger filled the communication channels. What is this? Where are these weapons coming from? They're everywhere, Commander, his tactical officer reported. The entire inner system is fortified. Our intelligence missed it completely. On the Resilience, Bora allowed herself a small smile. Humans learned from history, and history taught that defending home territory meant using every advantage. The Council came expecting a simple fight. Instead, they got a war, but the Council had numbers. For every platform Earth destroyed, they had more ships to bring forward. For every small victory, Earth lost a vessel it couldn't replace. The battle became grinding and brutal. Lieutenant Nari called out damage reports. We've lost the frigate Morning Star. The cruiser Pacific Dawn is heavily damaged. Our line near Jupiter is falling back. Bora's jaw tightened. They were bleeding, slowly but steadily. Order Jupiter Group to regroup at Defensive Station 3. Tell Admiral Tae Yang we need to activate contingency plan. The broadcast? Nari asked quietly. Yes, it's time. Earth had prepared for this moment. If they were going to lose, they would make sure the galaxy knew why. Admiral Tae Yang transmitted from Earth's command center. The signal went to every communication relay, every data hub, every information network in known space. People of the galaxy, Tae Yang began. Today the Council attacks Earth because we said no, because we refused to surrender our freedom. They call it enforcement. We call it tyranny. Images filled the broadcast. Historical records that Earth's intelligence had gathered over years. Records that the Council thought were lost or hidden. 3,000 years ago, the Council destroyed the Varenthian unity. Official records say they were criminals. The truth is they developed technology that threatened Council control. More images, more species that disappeared. 1,500 years ago, the Maker Federation was scattered across the galaxy. Official records say they violated peace treaties. The truth is they refused to submit to Council oversight. Name after name, species after species, all erased from the galaxy because they grew too strong or too independent. The Council doesn't want peace, Taeyang continued. They want control. They use the stabilization protocol to keep younger species weak, to prevent anyone from challenging their power. They've ruled through fear for millennia. He paused, his face filled with determination. Earth refuses to be another name on that list. We refuse to surrender. We refuse to submit. And we refuse to pretend that slavery is the same as security. The broadcast went on, detailing evidence that Earth had compiled. Financial records showing how the Council extracted wealth from younger species. Military reports proving that peacekeeping operations were really suppression of independence movements. Communication intercepts revealing how the eldest races manipulated Council votes. On the dominance, Frul watched the broadcast with growing rage. Cut their transmission. Jam their signals! We can't, sir. They're using distributed networks, multiple relay points. To stop it, we'd have to shut down every communication hub in the galaxy. Then destroy Earth, Vrul ordered. Target their homeworld. End this now. His weapons officer hesitated. Commander, if we attack their cities, the broadcast will show genocide. Every species in the galaxy will see us slaughter civilians. Vrul understood the trap. If he destroyed Earth, he proved everything the broadcast claimed. If he withdrew, he admitted defeat. Earth had put him in a position where any choice meant loss. The battle slowed. Council ships held position, waiting for orders. Earth ships maintained defensive positions, ready for whatever came next. And across the galaxy, billions of beings watched and listened to Earth's evidence. On the Resilience, Bora received a message from Admiral Taeyang. The broadcast is spreading faster than we hoped. Multiple species are confirming our evidence. The Council is scrambling to respond. Will it be enough? Bora asked. I don't know. But we've done what we came to do. We've made them bleed. We've shown everyone that the Council isn't invincible. And we've told the truth that they wanted to keep hidden. The broadcast changed everything. Within 6 hours, Earth's evidence reached every corner of the galaxy. Within 12 hours, younger species began sharing their own stories. Species that the Council silenced. Worlds that the Council suppressed. Technologies that the Council stole. On Station Terminus, the Council chamber filled with chaos. Ambassador after ambassador demanded explanations. The younger species weren't quiet anymore. They weren't afraid. Ambassador Daewon Park watched it happen from the human section. Yuna stood beside him, monitoring reports from across the galaxy. 23 species have issued formal protests, she said. 31 have recalled their military forces from Council operations. And the Freelands just announced they're recognizing Earth's independence regardless of Council action. The doors opened, and Ambassador Jin Woo Kang entered. He had spent the last 3 days meeting with representatives from sympathetic species, building alliances in secret, preparing for this moment. The votes are there, Jin Woo said quietly. If we can force an emergency session, we have enough support to challenge the stabilization protocol. Will the eldest races allow a vote? Daewon asked. They don't have a choice anymore. Half the Council is threatening to leave if they don't address this. The whole system is breaking. In Sol System, the standoff continued. The Council fleet held position at the system's edge. Earth's forces maintained their defensive line. But something had changed. The air of inevitability was gone. Captain Bora Shin received a transmission from one of the Council ships. Not from Vrol or any hegemon commander. From a smaller vessel, part of the Ven contingent. Earth ship Resilience, this is the Ven ship Harmony Current. We want you to know that we stand down. We will not fire on you. Many of us believe you are right. Bora was stunned. Harmony Current, are you defying Council orders? We are following our conscience. Something we should have done before. Our people are grateful for your courage. More messages came in. Ships from the Tolmec Unity, vessels from the Freehold, even a few smaller hegemon ships whose crews questioned their orders. The Council fleet was fracturing from within. On the Dominance, Hegemon Commander Vrul faced a crisis. Nearly a quarter of his force was refusing to engage. His own species questioned him. And across the galaxy, the Evidence Earth broadcast was confirmed by multiple independent sources. He received a transmission from High Validator, Keth 7. The ancient being's face appeared on his screen. Commander Vrul, the eldest races are convening. The situation has become untenable. Return to Terminus. We must address this politically before it escalates further. They defied us, Vrul growled. Earth must face consequences. Earth has already won, Keth 7 replied. Not militarily, but strategically. They've turned half the galaxy against us. If we destroy them now, we become the villains they claim we are. If we withdraw, we admit weakness. Either way, the old order is finished, Vrul wanted to argue. Wanted to fight. But he understood tactics. When a battle was lost, retreat was the only option. Very well. I'm recalling the fleet. In the council chamber on Terminus, the emergency session began. Every species attended. The gallery was packed with observers. Billions across the galaxy watched the broadcast. High Validator Keth 7 called the session to order. We gathered to address the crisis created by Earth's refusal and the subsequent complications. Ambassador Tal Oreen of the Freelands stood immediately. Complications? Is that what we call genocide evidence? The murder of entire species? The systematic suppression of younger civilizations? Other ambassadors shouted agreement. The chamber erupted in arguments. Silence between stars spoke, its voice cutting through the noise. The evidence requires investigation. If the historical claims are accurate, they demand accountability. If. Day One stood and walked to the central podium. We provided documents, communication records, financial data, testimony from dozens of species. How much proof do you need? He looked around the chamber. For 3,000 years, the Council has operated the same way. The eldest races make decisions. Younger species follow orders. Anyone who questions the system faces punishment. Anyone who grows too strong faces suppression. His voice grew stronger. Earth said no because we had to. Because someone had to. Because continuing this system meant watching it slowly destroy every species that came after the eldest races. The Ven ambassador stood. Earth is right. My species submitted to the stabilization protocol out of fear. But the broadcast showed us that fear is exactly what the Council uses to maintain control. We formally withdraw our acceptance. As does the Tolmec Unity, their representative added. The Freehold rejects the protocol entirely. One by one, species that had submitted changed their position. The protocol collapsed as its foundation crumbled. Keth 7's optical sensors swept the chamber. The ancient beings seemed to finally understand the magnitude of what was happening. The Council cannot function without unity, without respect for established authority. Then maybe the Council needs to change, said a voice that shocked everyone. Mora 3, a young validator, stood in the eldest race section. Validators almost never disagreed publicly with their elders. Their society valued unity and hierarchy above all else. I have examined the evidence, Mora 3 said. The historical claims are accurate. My own people suppressed this information. We justified it as necessary for stability. But stability built on oppression is not peace. It is simply delayed war. Keth 7 turned to face Mora 3. You dare question the validator consensus? I dare question wrong actions, Mora 3 replied. As should we all. The Council was created to foster cooperation, not to enforce domination. We have lost our way. Silence between stars tilted its head. The young validator speaks wisdom. Perhaps it is time to reconsider our structure. Even among the eldest races, cracks appeared. The absolute unity that maintained their control was breaking. Premier Hansol Kim's face appeared on the communication screens from Earth. The Council has a choice. Reform or end. If you choose reform, Earth will support it. We never wanted to destroy the Council. We wanted to be treated as equals. And if we refuse reform, Keth 7 asked, then Earth will establish its own alliances. With the Freelands, with species that value freedom over control, the galaxy is big enough for multiple power structures. Hegemon Commander Vrul entered the chamber. His fleet had returned to Terminus without completing its mission. Some saw it as retreat. Others saw it as restraint. Either way, it was unprecedented. The Hegemon Collective proposes a compromise, Vril said, his voice tired. Restructure the council. Equal representation for all member species. No tribute requirements. No forced compliance. And independent review of all historical actions. The chamber went silent. Vril, the symbol of council military might, was suggesting reform. The alternative is civil war, Vril continued. Multiple species are already forming defensive pacts outside council structure. If we fight them all, the galaxy tears itself apart. The Hegemon Collective values strength, but strength includes knowing when force has failed. Ambassador Talorine stood. The Freelands support this proposal, with additions: full transparency in council operations, term limits for leadership positions, and formal recognition that membership is voluntary, not permanent. Daewon watched as the conversation shifted. What started as enforcement of the stabilization protocol had become a constitutional debate. Earth's refusal had opened a door that no one could close. The vote took 3 hours. Species argued about details, debated implementation, worried about consequences. But finally the decision came. 41 species voted for reform. Only 6 voted against. The council would restructure. The tribute system ended. The eldest races would become advisors rather than rulers, and younger species would have real power in galactic decisions. Keth 7 looked at Daewon across the chamber. Are you satisfied, Ambassador Park? No, Daewon replied honestly. Satisfaction will come when we see if you keep these promises. When the reforms become reality. When the galaxy actually treats all species as equals. Fair enough, Keth 7 said. Something in its mechanical voice sounded almost like respect. The session ended. Species filed out of the chamber, already planning how to implement the new structure. Daewon stood at the podium for a moment, letting it all sink in. Yuna and Jinwoo joined him. We did it, Yuna whispered. We actually did it. Earth did it, Jinwoo corrected. Every human who stood firm, every ship that held the line, every person who refused to surrender, Daewon nodded. And now comes the hard part. Making sure the new system works better than the old one. Back on the Resilience, Captain Bo-Ra received word of the council vote. Her crew cheered. Earth's defense fleet sent congratulations across all channels. They had been prepared to die defending Sol system. Instead, they witnessed the beginning of a new era. Admiral Tae Yang sent a message to all Earth forces. You have earned rest. You have earned celebration. But remember this moment. Remember that we stood when standing seemed impossible. Remember that courage matters. Remember that a single word spoken with conviction can change the galaxy. On Earth, people poured into the streets, not in panic this time, but in joy. They celebrated survival. They celebrated victory. But most of all, they celebrated proving that freedom was worth fighting for. Premier Han Sol addressed the planet from Geneva.